It is one of the most impressive models that I've seen come through. On running quality, really, this is where this model shined. It went above, beyond, and even further still, with that ability to run with what was actually a massive train, far more than the prototype could ever have handled. This actually outperforms even some dedicated diesel locomotives in my fleet that really couldn't have taken on a train like that. A big hello to you. It's so great to see you, and I hope you are well. I'm Jenny Kirk, welcoming you up here to Weir Yard, and today we're taking another look at some of the latest releases from Heljan. Now, you might remember that we delved into the world of that iconic Razor's Edge AEC railcar with the passenger version on the channel. One of the things of note was that Heljan were really pushing the envelope on the number of different DCC lighting functions long before any of the other manufacturers in the UK were experimenting with just what they could do, and there was 9 different lighting functions on that model. Now, in amongst those pioneers of the diesel railcar world, the GWR that were always at the forefront of technology and laying the groundwork for the DMU fleets that we see on our railways even today, there were Parcels versions, and it's easy to forget just how important Parcels traffic was to the railways before the advent of road transport being really a viable long-distance alternative. The railways made a lot of money out of Parcels, and so much so that actually they equipped diesel parcel rail cars purely for this traffic, and the GWR really were pioneers in this area, and Heljan have produced a model of this Parcels variant. Now, this isn't just a re-livery of that passenger version that we saw. Heljan have gone above and beyond and have completely tooled up the body from fresh to be able to accurately represent this different variant. Now, they featured quite a lot of differences, even though ostensibly when you looked at it the shape was very much the same, with that slightly angular utilitarian look that nonetheless really did stick out as something fresh and modern at the time. The roof on this model features a very different layout of riveting detail and ventilators, and then the sides of this model too are very flush and smooth, with none of those passenger saloon windows that we saw in that passenger version, and instead we've got 6 double doors that give access to the interior, which again is correctly modelled for the parcels trolleys that would go in and out. And this was a really lucrative service, and one that you didn't want massive dwell times at stations, so there was really quite a network set up to be able to handle these as quickly as possible. These Razor's Edge railcars as well were designed to be able to trundle along with a tail load, and it wasn't uncommon to see them with 1 or 2 vans, maybe a milk tanker as well, or a horse box, and this is something that really was a lifeline for some of the lightly used passenger branches, that these were the saviours of the day in the 1930s and 40s. I'd like to thank Heljan, who very kindly sent one of these to the channel for us to be able to get a good close look. So without further ado, does it match up to what we found with the passenger version that we reviewed here some months ago? Is it definitely something that you should add to your collection, or is it one to avoid? Well, thanks to Heljan, we're going to be able to take a good close look. And don't forget that we've got a link in the description box if you like the look of this railcar, or indeed any of the others in the Heljan range, and want to pick one up for your model railway. And a word of warning, Heljan have said to me that this is likely to be the last production run of these models. They view it as quite possibly there's enough out there in the market, so don't dither and delay. If you want one of these, then this is possibly your last opportunity to get one of these iconic single car rail cars onto your layout in a variety of really eye-catching liveries. Come with me in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model 00 gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
Don't forget to interact with that like button. It's a really great way of showing your support for the channel. And please do consider subscribing, and really importantly, ring that bell. Even if you're already subscribed, if you haven't rung the bell, then YouTube is very good at hiding videos that you actually wanted to see from you. So get back into your subscriptions and ring that bell for all the channels that really is must-watch content for you, hopefully including this one as well. We've also got a link to our Patreon site where you can go and help support the channel there. We've got a number of different tiers of rewards, and there's something for everybody to help support the channel and keep it growing. And do share us out there and let people know about the content that we're producing. And of course, it's always great to see you when I'm out and about at shows, at model shops and preserved railways. So if you do see me and the monkey, then do come on over and say hello. It's always great to speak to you. But today's video, it's that Heljan Parcels railcar, and I'm really excited to take a good close look at this. I've actually found that the original passenger version has grown and grown on me. The more I run it, the more impressed I am. So when Heljan offered up a review sample of the Parcels variant, it was a great opportunity to see whether this squares up to that original release. Come with me and let's take a good close look. You might remember that here on the channel we did a full review of the Heljan AEC Razor type railcars, and these were the pioneering diesel railcars that were introduced by the GWR. They did two different versions, some of the earlier ones up to and including number 18 I think it was, didn't actually feature additional drawbars on them, and these later ones were designed so that they could actually pull a tail load, which made them much more flexible for working on some of the branch lines where the GWR were quite keen to defray costs and actually make the loss-making lines turn a profit and be commercially viable. These were the pioneers that paved the way for the first generation DMUs, which ultimately replaced them, although two of the railcars do survive to this day in preservation. This particular one was sent over for review and featured quite a few different innovations, including centrally mounted motor with drive to both bogies, with all-wheel drive and all-wheel pickup, which really did make this quite a performer. It's also got 9 different DCC lighting functions, and it features a bank of dip switches, so DC users can also turn those on and off, so you're not left out if you've not yet moved over to the wizardry of DCC. Now, at the time, Heljan promised that they were going to be doing the Parcels derivative of this railcar, and they have delivered on that promise and very kindly sent one of these over to the channel. This is catalogue number 19430, the GWR Chocolate Cream Express Parcels Railcar number 34. And as you can see there, we've got a 21-pin interface, and it actually doesn't tell you how many different lighting functions, but this features the same 9 lighting functions that we saw on the regular AEC railcar version. And we've also got the sprung buffers. It says it's sound ready, but I don't think there's actually a speaker included in this model. You will have to fit your own. It comes in the nice sturdy Heljan box, and just going to pull this out. We've got a little pamphlet there as well with a lot of information. Now, these were introduced in around 1940, 1941, so in the early days of the Second World War, and they were incredibly successful. And whilst the initial batches didn't feature the drawbar, the later ones from, I think it was number 18 or 19 onwards, did, and that gave them a lot of flexibility for running some of the lightly used branch lines and effectively doing away with the pickup goods trains, because these could pull a couple of wagons or maybe a milk van, something like that. And we've got in here, I'll just try and find that, we've got some couplings and a couple of detail parts just in that detail bag, which is quite easy to miss. And the pamphlet, again, heavy duty thing. We've got a lot of information, not just on the history of the class, but also on DCC fitting, gaining access to the motor, access to those dip switches that we talked about, and also some of the maintenance as well. And we've also got this pull-out exploded diagrams, which show if you need to order any spare parts, shows the internal layout as well. And we will be delving into that. Now, I think these are the same instructions that came with the regular railcar version, because it does include diagrams both for the regular version and this Parcels railcar. Now, I'm going to bring back in that number 22, because I want to show you that these aren't just warmed over versions of each other. The body moulding on these is bespoke to each, so you can see here we've got the smooth sides with the triple sets of double doors down the side, which gave access to the interior. And I think that these really do make for a much more eye-catching finish with this livery especially. We've got a slightly different livery on these, whereas the regular railcar came with the GWR shirt button. We've got a full GWR with the crest on, and then Express Parcels printed down the side. And again, when we look to the roof as well, this is a completely different roof moulding too, which is correctly patterned for the Parcels railcar as opposed to the passenger railcar. And I'd guess that it possibly wasn't unheard of for these to be paired up as well, running as pairs, maybe with the Parcels railcar and the passenger railcar running together. That said, both of these were able to pull a tail load, and that meant running some of these really quite loss-making branch lines did become viable, because you didn't need to send separate freight trains down the line. The model itself captures that really quite angular razor's edge of the cabs really well. This was very much a characteristic of these rail cars. You can see here a lot of angles, a lot of flat panels all kind of bullied together, but then we've got this complex compound curve of the roof, and that has all gone together really quite nicely, just as we saw in the previous version as well. This one comes with the grey roof as opposed to the white roof, and certainly I quite like this. It's in some respects it shows off a lot of the detail a lot better. So we've got the ventilators, but also a lot of this rivet detail across the top. Again, these were very, very angular, almost utilitarian for the day. The GWR noted for its design, but they do have this quite severe aesthetic, which I do quite like. We've got fully detailed cabs, front and back, and these, actually, there's a lot of glass in these cabs, so good all-round visibility for the crew, and that also means that it's quite a useful thing that we get working cab lights on these as well. As I said before, we've got 9 different lighting functions available, so when we come to the DCC fitting, I'm actually going to be using a Dapol Imperium decoder, and we do have a link to those down in the description box, along with a link to the Heljan rail cars, because you are going to need a decoder with more than 6 functions. Now, the Dapol Imperium 8, which I've used, doesn't let us turn on the interior lights, but with the Express Parcels railcar, I don't think that's too much of a problem. Whereas with the regular railcar, it is helpful to be able to access that ninth function out of the box. I'm not too bothered with this, so I'm quite happy to use an 8-function decoder. Looking to the glazing, it's flush fit, and we've got the bars as well behind, and you can see that there is interior detail, although one thing which is a little bit of a disappointment is that through these windows we're able to see all of the wires and electronics, and this may be an area that would benefit from having maybe a little coat of black paint on the inside, just to blank these off neatly so it doesn't look like they're painted out, but will just hide some of that is behind. You can't see it from the cab end because we've got the bulkhead, but we do have that fully detailed cab, and I really do like this GWR crest and the GWR logo on the front. This again differs from the GWR shirt button type logo that was on the passenger style rail card, and we don't have quite as much of the yellow lining, but I actually prefer this version of the livery, and Heljan have done this really well. The bogies feature this characteristic slab side with all of the detail around the axle boxes, and you can see the primary and secondary suspension all in there. We've got brake blocks that do line up with the wheels, all wheel pickup, just a little bit of lubrication trying to break free there, and then as per the prototype, we look on the other side, we've got this drive which connects the two wheels, or the two axles on each of the bogies, which on the real ones would have established the all-wheel drive. On the model, it's purely for appearances, but certainly really well done. Some of the extra detailed parts give you a cardan shaft, which goes from this and just hidden behind the fairing, and those are in that detail bag. Looking to the underside, we've got that full complement of the 9 dip switches, which are easy to access and easy to just clip over as and when, if you're a DC operator, to be able to turn different lighting functions on and off. You can see as well the flexible drive that goes to each bogie, and that keeps the interior of the railcar free of any of the drive mechanism and gives us a really quite sturdy all-wheel drive. The motor itself is hidden behind the lower fairing in this box, and there are 4 screws to give us some access to that should you need to. Looking down the side, we've got these etched grills. Again, really nicely done. We saw this on the regular railcar. We've got a wealth of separately applied detail. Even though we don't have all those windows, I think that this really does show up the quality of the moulding of this really well. The paint finish too is perfectly done. We've got that slightly satiny finish, and we've got the drop shadowing on the numbers, number 34, all of the lining, the cream, and the chocolate brown definitely are perfectly rendered. And then we've got all of the different lighting functions, and we've got a full complement of the buffer beam pipework, though you will need to remove some of this if you add those couplings to enable you to run a tail load. The buffers are sprung, and it's quite a stiff spring, but certainly really nicely rendered. Again, looking down the other side, it's a shame on these front windows. They could have done with just something to screen out the electronics. It does come across quite prominently through those windows, but looking through the others, we've just got the interior of the model, and certainly everything else on this is really nicely done. When it comes to running on DC, the model performs really quite well and smoothly out of the box. It does recommend that you do a little bit of running in, but actually I don't tend to find that bit to be particularly necessary, and the model isn't particularly harmed for being expected to perform straight out of the box, and certainly this one did work really well straight from the box. To get inside this model for DCC fitting, well, you're going to need a small crosshead style jeweler's screwdriver. There are 4 screws that you need to get into, and you'll just have to move the bogie to one side just to get down and onto that, and then move it back. We've got another one there, and then ignore these four. They hold the motor in. Again, another screw back here, and a final screw here. It might be beneficial to use a small pair of tweezers just to make sure that you get all of these screws released, just so that they can't catch and impinge on getting the chassis out from the body. Now, this is where it's a little bit trickier, and certainly the instructions only really give a briefest of hints as to how the chassis is held in there. There are 4 clips, but it doesn't tell you where they are, and as you can see, if you prise the body sides apart and give it a nudge, they're really difficult to shift. And actually, the best thing to do is to just get your screwdriver in and just lever very carefully. Don't put too much pressure on those buffers, but just lever one end out and then just carefully prise the whole chassis loose, and then you can see that that comes free. Inside the model there really is a huge amount of space. You can imagine any size of stay alive in here is an absolute doddle, and there's also plenty of space for a speaker setup, and if you want some really quite beefy mega bass style speaker, then quite frankly you are really not going to be pushed on space. The beauty of the Express Parcels model is that as long as you place them away from the doors, you're going to have no real great issues in keeping them hidden inside. This whole bar across the top is the lighting bar, and this includes the interior lighting, the cab lighting, and the top lights, which come on and off just above the cabs. The decoder itself you'll find here. I've already gone ahead and fitted the Dapol Imperium, but I'm going to take it out because I want to show you something which could trip you up. And pay special attention to this because, again, the instructions don't really point this out, and you have to really make sure that you're doing this right, because access can be just a little bit more difficult than we've seen in some other locomotives. The decoder and the blanking plate before it are actually mounted what many modelers would consider upside down. It is perfectly normal, and the NMRA spec does allow for the 21-pin decoder to be mounted either way up, depending on space. In this rail car, you need to insert it from the black pin holder side of the decoder first, and not the way that you're probably more used to. Because of these extra wires, you'll also find it's just a little bit trickier to get this lined up, and you have to make sure that the decoder matches up with the pin headers. It's very easy to get it out of alignment, and if you force it, then you will bend and break the pins and render your model inoperative. Once we're happy that the decoder is sat perfectly on the pins, we can very gently rock that back into place. And it will go in quite readily without needing any force, but as you can see, that decoder is upside down compared with how most models take it. So that's just something to be aware of. I've used the Dapol Imperium 8, and that gives us access to 8 of the 9 lighting functions. If you want more than that, then you'll need to source a decoder which allows for at least 9 lighting functions, and they are few and far between, although the model is set up for the ESU Lock Pilot 5 or the ESU Lock Sound 5, so that is another option which is fairly straightforward to go down if you wish, although the Dapol Imperium decoders do seem to be easier to get hold of in the UK. Once we've got everything in, these appear to be the speaker wires. They are nicely capped off at the end, but just make sure that they are tucked in out of the way, and then we can go ahead and put the body back on. Make sure it slides in all the way, and then it's simply a case of putting these 4 screws back in and tightening them up. When it came to running, the model really was a stellar performer. On the tortured test track, it took in all the undulations and point work without ever skipping a beat. It even got round the radius 1 curves with no great issue whatsoever. Tasked with a prototypical tail load, it took the 2 wagons that I attached behind it completely within its stride. Now, prototypically, these rail cars would never really be tasked with more than maybe a couple of vans or a milk tanker. But when I put it on the main layout and hooked it up to an incredibly long freight train, it actually pulled it like it wasn't even there. With its all-wheel drive, all-wheel pickup, this actually outperforms even some dedicated diesel locomotives in my fleet that really couldn't have taken on a train like that. It really is impressive just how well over-engineered the drivetrain on these is, and they really would never be taxed on your layout. It was quite clear as it ran round that it would even probably take more in tow without skipping a beat. On the point work, it performed really well. The pickups were well adjusted out of the box, although there was ever so slight flicker on some of the lighting, though this is something which just a small stay alive would get rid of that, and there is definitely plenty of space within this body shell to take any stay alive that you might wish to add. Sound fitting is sure to be a doddle. Whilst it doesn't come with a factory fitted speaker, there is so much space inside that it would be rude not to fit a massive mega bass speaker in here, leaving plenty of room for a stay alive and probably anything else you could think of that you might want to put in here. All in all, it is a stellar performer and certainly one of the most impressive models that I've seen come through. It has to be said that it would be nice to see manufacturers offer main range locomotives that are designed to pull massive freight trains that ran half as good as this does. This is a super smooth transmission from Heljan, which works just perfectly out of the box. I've always said that the Heljan mechanisms are definitely the Rolls-Royce standard by which I compare all the other brands to. And in fact, I have one of the 05 shunters from their stable to actually test my track work because it is such a silky smooth mechanism. And this diesel Parcels rail car really doesn't disappoint in that respect. So we turn now to the scores. And first up is build quality, and actually this is a very nice robust model. Nothing fell off throughout the review, even with some quite heavy handling, and even some of the areas like the drives on the bogies stayed exactly where it needed to be. And I really do like the quite robust buffer beam detail, which if you want to run this singly, just leave it where it is. And if you want to add on a coupling and pull a tail load, then it's quite easy just to trim down some of those pipes and add in the coupling. The only area where I was just a little bit disappointed was that slight droop on the coupling, but this is something that isn't too noticeable and certainly doesn't affect the model when running. So all in all, I'm going to give this a 9.9. On running quality, really this is where this model shined. It went above, beyond, and even further still, with that ability to run with what was actually a massive train, far more than the prototype could ever have handled. And that means that these have a lot in reserve. They really don't feel taxed on your layout, and that means that these are going to be a superb, reliable performer day in, day out. In fact, I'll go out on a limb and say these will be one of your most reliable models in your fleet. With nothing to detract, it gets the full 10 out of 10. On DCC fitting and innovation, it's not too difficult to get inside these models, although I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more detail in the instructions to be able to just pinpoint where the body is clipped on. It doesn't feel like it particularly needs to be clipped, with those 4 screws holding that entire body on really quite firmly. Once we got inside, Getting the DCC decoder in place, again, there's just a little bit that would be helpful in the instructions just to clarify that we're putting that decoder in the opposite way round to what most models seem to be expecting. This is well within the NMRA spec, but it's an easy step to miss, and because of the cramped location where the decoder socket is, it could be something that would fox anybody who's trying to DCC fit this and maybe just misses which way round the blanking plate was when they took it off. The lighting functions really are nice. They've got 9 different functions, although I was only able to find in my stash an 8-function decoder. It's no bad thing not being able to light up the interior. One of the areas where I think that this model does fall down a little bit is having all that electronics very plainly visible through some of these windows. Just a little bit of blanking behind there would have helped no end, and when you have the interior lights on, that's only going to draw emphasis to that. The rest of the lighting functions, though, were really good and straightforward. I like the cab detail that is shown off greatly with that cab light interior, and the marker lights reverse as required, but because they've very carefully put them on all these different functions, it means that when you're running these with a tail load, it's really easy to turn those red tail lights off. It's a great effort from Heljan, and I'm going to give this an 8.9 out of 10. On accuracy and quality of finish, well, that quality of finish and the accuracy really are well done. They captured that razor's edge look of the almost utilitarian streamlining on these absolutely perfectly, and they really are a model that just keeps on growing on me. The decoration on these is second to none, and the Parcels variant does give you a lot more scope to admire some of this tampo printing detail. I really like the GWR crest, lettering as well, and the lining is great, straight and true. We've even got a fully detailed cab interior with everything picked out in the colours that it needs to be. And again, we've got the GWR crest on there, the coat of arms, that is so well done. All in all, there's not really that much to fault, except, again, unfortunately my eye does come back to that electronics through that window, but it'd be a really easy fix. Just a piece of black paper just carefully placed in there, maybe just stuck in with a bit of sticky to the frame that the wiring is in, and that will go away. So it's no bad thing. I'm going to give this a 9.9. On value for money, I'm looking around and finding this particular production run at £198, and we've got a link in the description box to help you find these models. It must be said that that's a little bit towards the top end of what you might expect to pay for a single car railcar, but just remember, you're getting a lot for your money. This mechanism really is superb. We've also got a lot of different DCC lighting functions, and this is a quite special model. If you want to find the previous passenger versions, I'm finding these at 167 at that link as well, and that may also be an option to pick yourself up a more bargain priced model. It's about what you'd expect to pay in this day and age. I'm going to give it a 7.8, and that gives us a final score of 46.5. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative, and we've got that link in the description box that takes you to where you too can find your own version of the Parcels railcar, but also the passenger versions as well. And maybe as an idea for your layout, why not get a Parcels railcar and a passenger one too? And it wouldn't be entirely unheard of that these might work in pairs together, coupled together as an express unit with passengers and those important parcels, a really, really important aspect of railways in days gone by. And really, right up until the early 1990s, sending parcels by rail was still a big deal. It's probably one of the things that privatisation put an end to when Red Star Parcels finally gave up on rail transportation. But I'd love to hear from you in the comment section down below. Maybe you've already got one of these Heljan rail cars. Maybe you've got one of its big brothers in O gauge as well. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. What do you think about it? In particular, what are your thoughts on all these different lighting functions that we're starting to see come through? Do you like them? If you're a DC modeler as well, that bank of switches underneath, do you want to see more of that? Is this something that really does help those people who may be quite happy with a DC analog layout to enjoy and make the most of all of those different lighting functions? Please do leave a comment down below. I love reading all of your comments. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's really important to help the channel grow, and ring the bell. And this is something that applies to all of your favorite YouTube channels. You might be subscribed, but if you've not rung that bell, then YouTube is very good at hiding things from you. So get through your subscriptions and make sure that all of those great channels out there with that great content have got the bell rung so you don't miss out. And don't forget as well to check out our full merchandise store, where we've got lots and lots of great designs for you to choose from, and again, another great way to help support the channel. And with us in this run up to Christmas, then of course these make great gifts for yourself or for others too. But until next time, you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabrique.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model 00 gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/JenniferKirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.